Hi, my name is Harry Parker, and I'm currently a student at Jones Technical Institute here in Jacksonville, Florida, also known as JTech. I'm currently enrolled in their automotive program. Today I'm going to be doing a video demonstration on how to replace the front hub assembly and R&R the brake pads on this 2001 Ford Ranger XLT 4x4. The first thing that I would like to talk about is we need to prepare the vehicle so that we can remove the hub and R&R the brakes. The first thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to remove the tire. To be able to do that, you're going to have to lift the vehicle. You're going to have to lift the truck in the air so that you can remove the tire. So to safely do that, you're going to want to make sure that you got a proper jack. So here's two types of jacks that I use. This is a floor jack and this is a bottle type jacks. There's some other types of jacks out there that you can use as well, but you want to make sure that you're using something that's rated for what you're trying to lift. Once you get the vehicle raised in the air with one of these two types of jacks, then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to place a couple of jack stands. As you can see, I've already got the jack stands underneath the vehicle, put where I want to put on them, where it's going to make the best sense for me to keep it in the air safely, but also have the working space that I need. The next thing that I'm going to cover is safety equipment that you'll need, tools, and cleaning materials that will be necessary to successfully complete this service of the front hub and front brakes. The first thing that you're going to want is you're going to want to make sure that you got safety glasses. Anytime that you're going to be working around power equipment, tools, you're going to be getting underneath the vehicle, sticking your head in wheel wells, make sure that you at least protect your eyes, make sure that you got safety glasses and that they're safety rated. The next thing is you may want to consider wearing some sort of mechanic's gloves if you want to make sure that you have some extra protection for your hands. Also want to make sure that you're not wearing any jewelry that can get snagged on any of the sharp components and stuff that you're going to be working on. With that being said, cleaning materials that you're going to want to have on hand and other supplies is you're going to want to have some brake cleaner, you're going to want to have some penetrant lubricant, PB blaster, WD-40, something that's going to help you break loose some of the stubborn nuts. You're going to also, I like to use degreaser because I like to pre-soak my brake components as soon as I start disassembly. It also minimizes the amount of brake clean that I have to use, and also it kind of reduces some of the dust. As far as the tools go, you're going to need a C-clamp to compress the calipers. You're going to need a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch drive metric socket set and one special socket, which is a 32 millimeter deep well socket. You're going to need this to remove the front hub nut. So you want to make sure that you have that on hand. You're going to want a couple different kinds of extensions to get in and around places. You may even want a universal socket, and then you're going to want breaker bar and ratchet. I included a flat tip screwdriver in case that I might need it, and then a couple different pry bars for prying. And then also I got this body clip pry bar. I'm going to use that to remove the electrical harness that's associated with the anti-lock brakes that's actually integrated into the front hub assembly itself. During reassembly, you're going to want to have a torque wrench, and you're also going to need a rubber mallet to reinstall hub caps. Also, for removing the tire, I'm electing to use impact wrench to aid in that process. Then the last thing that you need to consider is having some ties, coat hanger, mechanics wire, or a bungee cord to tie off the brake caliper once you remove it. You don't want it dangling, so you're gonna tie it off. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start removing the hub. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this lug cover. If you've got regular steel wheels or custom rims, you're not going to need to do this step, but you are going to need to make sure that you got your if you have a anti-theft lug key, you're going to want to make sure that you have that on hand. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove this lug cover. So there's a little slot right in here. You put your pry bar in there, and then you just start working it around, and then it's removed. Now the next thing that you would do is you would loosen up all of your lug nuts, and you would also use your 32 millimeter socket wrench with the vehicle on the ground. I've already broke this loose because I knew what I was going to be doing, and I was doing the rear brake. So this entire vehicle is lifted. This has already been broken loose, and I did that prior to raising the vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove the tire now. Tires removed. Now with the tire removed, we're going to go ahead and we're going to finish removing this hub nut. And as I already previously stated, you're going to want to make sure that you break this thing loose prior to raising the vehicle, because you're going to need that tire to be stationary. But I'm using an impact wrench, so I'm going to be all right. Now that I've removed my hub nut, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove 2 of the caliper mounting bolts. One's here and one is right here using a 14 millimeter socket. Bolts being removed. This is a good time where you may need to use a pry bar to come in here and just detach this caliper from the rotor and from the caliper bracket itself. And this is also where you're going to want to tie it off. So I'm going to just use some wire zip ties. One of the big things you got to worry about is you don't want to damage this line. So if you just try to prop it up here and it swings and it jerks, you're going to damage the line. You're going to cause yourself some additional work that you might not want to do. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove this. And using a ratchet or a breaker bar with a 15 millimeter socket, we're going to remove 2 bolts right here that's attaching this caliper. Okay, this one's going to require the breaker bar. Okay, using the breaker bar, we're going to gain a little bit more mechanical advantage, seeing as how this one is tight. Okay, with this removed, I'm going to bring it over to the parts cleaner. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the harness for the ABS that's actually attached to the front hub. Right here, there's a clip. There's a little button on the electrical clip. You're going to push in on that little button and just pull it down. Now with this disconnected, we're going to move over to here. Harness clip there. And then there's two more right here. And now to remove the rest of this harness, there's one more retaining bolt, which is right here. Right here. To remove this bolt right here, you're going to need a 5/16. Little guy's got thread for days. Okay. We have one more cable clip here, body clip. Now they're all removed. It's just 3 bolts, and also these are 5/16. And this is all going to go to the parts washer. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to, using a soft hammer, or you could put a piece of block of wood here, we're going to drive the hub assembly Now we're going to go ahead, we're going to do a little bit of cleanup, and then we're going to go into reassembly. Before we start getting started with the cleanup, I like to put a catch pan here to catch some of the mess. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to soak this down with some degreaser. And then I'm going to clean it with the soft brush and a green pad. We're going to go ahead and let this soak a little bit, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, now that I got everything cleaned up the way I want it, we're going to go ahead and we're going to reassemble. One thing you want to make sure that you do is you always want to compare your two parts. I've already compared the other side, so I know this hub is in fact the correct hub. So what we're going to do is we're going to reinstall the hub. You're going to slide it back over the splines. Like so. And then you need to start the 3 mounting bolts. Okay, now that we got everything hand tight, we're going to go ahead and grab our torque wrench and get this thing torqued down to specs. Okay, now that we got everything hand started, we're going to go ahead and torque to specs, which is 85 foot-pounds. We're going to go ahead and we're going to reattach the harness. Okay, now that we've got the clips in place, we're going to go ahead and we're going to reattach this little bolt on the harness. And now we're going to reattach this back up into our connector. Okay, it's reattached. Now with the harness in place, we're going to go ahead and reattach the dust covering. Okay, they're all good and tight. Okay, we're going to run this nut down just a little bit, and then we'll do a final tighten once it's on the ground. Okay, now the hub is pretty much complete other than tightening up this nut once we get the vehicle back down on the ground and doing the final tighten. So we're going to start reassembling our brakes. So here is the caliper bracket with the slides to the pads right here. I just reinstalled these. These are brand new. One thing I want to point out is you need to inspect your rod boots right here and make sure that they're not torn or cracked or anything like that. And then I clean these pins and then put some new grease in it so that it's operating properly. Now it's time to reinstall our new rotor. With the rotor installed, I'm going to hold it in place by running down 2 lug nuts. And that's going to keep everything properly aligned while I'm reassembling. Now we'll reattach the caliper bracket. In case you become confused, you just got to remember that these go to the back, and you'll see that this is spinning the same way that the rotor is spinning. Now that I got the caliper bracket bolt started, I'm going to go ahead and just run them down with my ratchet. Okay. Okay, now we're ready to reinstall our pads, but before we do that, what we're going to do is these little pad tracks where your brake pads slide on, you're going to put some synthetic brake grease. This is going to help prevent them from squeaking and making noise and just operating better. Now with that done, we'll go ahead and we'll install our pads. Okay, brake pads are installed. So the next thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to prep the caliper so that it'll seat back over this. We're going to go ahead and grab the seat clamp. So we'll be right back with the seat clamp. Okay, we're going to use the seat clamp to press in the caliper cylinders back in so that they're flush, so that they'll slip over these pads, because as they wore, these things compensated for the wear by coming out. So now that they're brand new, we need to reset it back. So you'll have to go back and forth between each cylinder to make sure that they're both flat. Because as you compress one, unless you got 2 C-clamps, then yeah, you could do them both at the same time, but I'm just alternating. Okay, they're compressed. So now we're going to slip the caliper back onto the bracket. Don't need that anymore. All right, caliper is repositioned. Now we just start the bolts, and we just need to tighten those down. Okay, it's nice and tight. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to bleed our brakes. Okay, now that the hub's been reassembled, the new brake pads have been replaced, the new rotor's on, this will conclude this video. The only thing left to do now is to bleed the brakes and then put the tires back on and torque them to specs. But hope you got something out of this today, and thank you for tuning in.